Hello everyone, I'm Yuunarii, and I think being an adult is not really what most people make it out to be. Probably doesn't really come as much of a surprise given my previous video, in which I talked about how I think it's kind of bullshit that enjoying childish things into adulthood is seen as something deviant and weird. Card is up there in case you haven't seen it. Anyway, what do you think of when you hear the term adulthood? Like, what would you say differs adulthood from childhood? To me, it's easy. Maturity. Children are immature, and adults are mature. Okay, but what does it mean to be mature? If I were to ask someone to describe someone that is mature, there's a good chance they'll describe that person as, like someone that's independent, like having a degree, owning your own house, being able to drive, owning your own car, even having your own family, working a job, investing in things like stocks, having a decent list of life accomplishments, paying bills, drinking alcohol, doing sexual shit. The usual stuff that adults can do, or are even obligated to do, that children simply can't. And so, the more of those traits one possesses, the more mature you are. Makes sense. Except, that's not what maturity is. Let me explain. Also, before I continue this video, I want to give a quick shout out to my amazing patrons over at Patreon for supporting this channel and allowing me to keep on creating these types of videos. If you wish to support the channel, then please consider checking that out, or if you wish to make a one-time donation, then there's also my Ko-fi. Okay, so if maturity isn't all of those things I mentioned earlier, then what is it? Because when kids want to look more mature, don't they also do all of those things? And yeah, they indeed do. Kids, and more specifically teens, are very quick to say things like, I'm very mature for my age because ... Or, most people my age would do blank, but I do blank. Or whenever they've earned their driver's license, they're also quite quick to let others know, because that's what they deem to be mature. They follow the definition that I mentioned earlier, which, ironically, in my opinion, is actually a very immature way of defining maturity. Of course, as teenagers, you're learning and processing so many new things and information, while at the same time trying to figure out who you are as a person, that it's more than understandable that you'd use a more simplified, clear-cut definition like that. Maturity, however, or at least how I see it, is not based on external, tangible factors. It doesn't matter if you have a driver's license, if you still live with your parents, if you have a college degree, even if you have a job, or how much life experience you have. To me, it's all based on emotional and mental skills. They're abilities. And generally, you learn these skills as you grow up, experience life, and reflect upon things. Think of traits like being able to take responsibility for your own actions, being able to have a healthy argument, being able to communicate your needs, adult communication in general, showing respect even to those whose personal choices you might disagree with, good judgment and decision-making skills, recognizing that the world doesn't owe you shit and that you also don't owe the world shit, outside of legal obligations, being able to control your emotions such as not taking out your anger on others, being able to show emotional vulnerability in order to be empathetic, those sorts of things. Now those might seem as very, of course those things matter, aspects, but you'd be surprised how overlooked these things really are in daily life. Say, for example, you have a 30-year-old dude, living on his own with his girlfriend, working a job, paying his bills, yet whenever he and his girlfriend disagree on something, he will get annoyed, try to convince her that he's right, only for her to disagree, causing him to fly into a tantrum, storming off and stubbornly doing things his way anyway. Instead of, listening to each other's perspectives, respecting each other's opinion, understanding where each person is coming from, and come to a proper compromise. Oh yeah, wait, no, that takes effort. I think society's verdict would be something along the lines of like, oh, well, this is a proper adult that's contributing to society because they're fulfilling their societal duties. They're paying their bills, they're working a job. Nothing wrong here. My personal verdict, they're not an adult, but a man-child. Why? Because that person is someone with a fully developed brain, has the full capability to be a responsible adult and should be making wiser choices compared to themselves from 10 years ago, yet chooses to still go about life the exact same way they did when they were a fucking teenager. That's why, to me, that's a man-child and not an adult. Teens and young adults, on the other hand, are still developing their brains, so they simply are physically unable to grasp certain concepts yet. Therefore, you can't really blame them whenever they still engage with that sort of mentality. Not the case for anybody over the age of 25, though. Now, some people might say, well, what does it matter how someone decides to resolve their issues, as long as they're still fulfilling their obligations towards authority figures, such as bosses or the government, it's fine, right? No! Because by holding on to these childish ways of problem solving, it's gonna be really difficult for you to connect to people. Because in order to navigate adult life, think forming long-term relationships, having proper discussions with people, communicating in a manner that is healthy, you need those skills. Your mindset doesn't just affect you, but also the people around you and how you go about interacting with them. It just frustrates me so much how little society seems to really care about an actual mature mindset, and instead treats maturity as this thing that you simply obtain by passing certain tangible goals in life. And how the definition of maturity is so closely tied to respect. What's that? You've lived for over 50 years and worked your way up the corporate ladder in that time? Why, sir, you are a real mature adult. You're owed all the respect in the world. I mean, yeah, fair. Good on you. I can respect the dedication. And if this is what makes you happy, then I'm happy for you. But say that person happens to be an enormous self-centered asshole, then sure, yeah, I'll acknowledge your accomplishments, but fuck respecting you. If you don't even respect others, you don't get to demand shit like that. Sure, some aspects like living on your own or having a family will encourage you to develop that type of mindset more than when you're not in those situations. You're gonna have to learn more about responsibility and that sort of things. But those things don't inherently make you more mature than those not in that position. Now, I could go on and describe why adulthood in and of itself is overrated, or rather why I think childhood is actually very underrated, but that's a topic for another video. Anyway, thank you so much for sitting through this video and hearing out my opinions. I really hope you enjoyed it. There's a lot more topics I'd love to share my opinions on, so if that sounds like something you'd like to hear, then please let me know. Hopefully I'll see you again next time. So, yeah. Bye! Okay, so I'm super happy that this video got done so quickly, because what I really love is being able to just express my thoughts and then just getting it out to you guys as quick as I can. And that's what I really like about this visual aesthetic. Plus it still looks very pleasing and like creative and shit, so yay! I'm not sure if I'll do another opinion video after this one. Again, I do have a lot of things I want to talk about, but at the same time I don't want to bore you guys too much with my opinions, because I also still want to showcase some more Toho music and that sort of stuff. Or I could just ramble about one of my many strange interests or something like that. Anyway, I want to give a special shout out to Methicha, Matt, and Romanov for supporting me on Patreon. Thank you guys very much.